So this is part 2 of this discussion. So going off of what I ended with in part 1, about how, back in those times of Aristotle and Socrates and all that, they believed in gods with a little g, and there's a couple that believed in one god with like the big G. And I think that Aristotle was one of those. And I think that's where his story aligns with Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel's, because I think they're both saying it's better to die and go to heaven, return home, rather than live with physical limitations and being a burden on other people around you, and being sick and frail. So I think that that's how Aristotle relates to Dr. Emanuel. Okay, and then on to the questions, the required questions. It says about the flourishing life, living a flourishing life. And this is the part where I'm going to have my grandma come in and discuss this with me. So I'm going to state what I think, and then she can say what she thinks, and then we will discuss it together. So, I think that when he's talking about living a flourishing life, he's talking about being healthy and not being sick, and he wants to flourish and be successful in his life. And like when he's talking about dying at 75, by that time he'll already have lived his flourishing life and not be a burden to those around him. Okay, and then my grandma's going to say what she thinks.
Well, I think one of his visions of a flourishing life would be to love and be loved, to be vibrant, energetic, not having very many mental or physical limitations. One where loved ones can remember you living a full and good life, not being incapacitated with no disabilities. He wants to be remembered by his children and grandchildren as being a vibrant man. And I can understand that, being as I age, and I'm at the age I am now, I'm not too far from 75, and I can already tell that things are changing physically. And it does change your perspective on things, and being that he is faced with death and pain and suffering like he is, being an oncologist, I'm sure that has made him contemplate these things. He doesn't want to be a burden to his children. He wants his children to remember him, like I said before, as being energetic and vibrant and not causing his children pain or financial hardship maybe, or even emotional hardship. Also, you can't be as creative and productive, I don't think, when you get older, because you do have some limitations. And I think he talked about that, and that's important to him.
I think that I agree with her on all those statements as well. That just kind of adds to what I had to say about, him aging and living the flourishing life. Okay, the second required question, talking about what does how he lives a flourishing life say about human nature. I think that, humans, like the human nature is obviously people want to live as long as they can, be as healthy for as long as they can, and that's just, I mean, that's human nature. That's what people, go from day to day, thinking of, what supplements can I take to live a healthier life. And I think also Dr. Emanuel talks about that in his article a little bit. He touches on it. Like people start taking collagen, go as far as getting Botox, taking all these vitamin supplements. Oh, if I work out twice a day, every day, then I'll live longer. Or, some people have different speculations, like, drinking a Dr. Pepper a day will keep the doctor away or whatever. But I think that, that's just human nature to try to be healthy and live as long as you can. And that goes back to the flourishing life, being healthy. And, like, by 75, he talks about you will already have lived your flourishing life. So how I would say that relates is it kind of is opposite, I guess, or like it's not agreeing, the terms are not agreeing, because whereas living a flourishing life is like, okay, I'm going to live my life and be healthy for as long as I can, but then I'm going to die. And then human nature is saying, no, I want to live as long as I can, and then keep living, So I think that conflicts in that sense. And then here's my grandma's point of view.
Human nature is for us to live as long as we can, even if we have to live struggling to live. I know even in this article that he talks about that a lot, and even though you're living a long life past 75, even if you're 80 or 90 or so on, and I can understand it because I take care of a 92-year-old mother who had a stroke, and it's difficult, and it's very hard, and sometimes it's a burden, and I think that he touches on that, and he says a flourishing life is one without all these things. We're not flourishing if we're just existing, and I think he brought that out, and that's just my personal opinion. Like I said, my mother, who is 92 and she's had a stroke, she can't communicate properly like she used to, and I find myself getting agitated because that happened to her, and that she's not the mother that I once knew, that took care of me and cooked, and she can't cook, and she can't do the things she used to do. And this bothers her because she was always such a giving person. I think this man sees that, and I think he is that type of person.
Okay, and like, I said on the first question, I do agree with that too. I do see the struggles that my great-grandma, which is my grandma's mother, has to live with every day, and how she struggles to do some of the things that she used to be able to do that she can't do so well, or even not do at all anymore. And she can't live at home by herself or stay by herself. And so I think that in the article, when he's talking about being a burden on his family and friends and all that, I think I can relate to that personally. Okay, and then the second part of the second required question, I think it said, what does Dr. Emanuel believe to be of the human nature and purpose? Hang on, I'm trying to read this.
defining characteristics of human.
Okay, so what does he believe to be the defining characteristics of the human nature and purpose? I think me and my grandma kind of agreed on this part about to live as long as possible. I mean, in the article, like, that's human nature, obviously, and we touched on that in the second question. Yeah, I'm gonna let her put her input on this.
Well, like I said before, it's human nature is to live as long as we can and to prolong as long as we can, even if that is struggling to survive. I don't consider that really living. You can exist, but you don't live. And that's a big difference. And I think he understands that, and that's what he's talking about here. I think it's sometimes our nature to be eternally optimistic. And sometimes we suppress our thoughts about thinking about God and heaven or hell. And even though we know that it exists, and I believe, as you and I do, Macy, that we believe in an eternal life, and we believe there's a life hereafter. And Dr. Emanuel wanted to celebrate life and leave his kids with a legacy that he lived a celebrated life. He don't want his kids to remember him being feeble and disabled and not living life to its fullest, and that's very important to him.
Okay, and then the last question that we picked for the student choice question was, I think it was, what do we think, on if we think we should die at 75. Me personally, I mean, it doesn't really faze me. Of course I want to live, a long, healthy life, but, knowing where I'm going after I die here on earth, spending my eternal life in heaven, it doesn't really, faze me. I think that, like I said, I do want to live a long, healthy life, but it wouldn't faze me if I were to die at 75.
Okay, my thinking on that is it's up to God to make that decision. That's my belief, and that's what I have to go by. I'm not saying that it will be an easy life if you live past 75 into 80, 90, or even 100, but to me, I think that that's God's decision when to take you home. And so do I think that I should die at 75? Not necessarily, but if I do die at 75, I may die before 75. That's all in God's hands.
Okay, and that is the end of our discussion of the Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel article and Aristotle.